Welcome to Turning Point USA, America Fest 2024. Unusual Suspects broadcasting live, and we have had some fantastic guests, thanks to Valuetainment, to be here joining us today. Joining me are my usual Unusual Suspects. We have Kelly, we have Amy, we have Brandon, we have Humberto, and a very special guest. And the reason she's sitting here today with us is because of our dynamic booker, the best booker in booking in podcasting, Tony Naemi. A big round of applause from everybody on the panel for Tony lining us up here with the CEO of Epoch Times. We have Janice Trey joining us. Janice, thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me on your show.
No problem. So you have such an interesting background, but if you could, do me a favor and please tell the audience just a little bit about yourself, your background, and how long you have been with Epoch Times.
Yeah, so I joined the Epoch Times since July 2024. I came with 3 decades of corporate American experience, including vice president roles in several Fortune 500 companies. I'm also a certified public accountant for 3 decades with active license. I also serve multiple nonprofit boards from performing arts to education, higher ed, and as well as think tank, and also in medical school.
I want to talk about your background because in your bio it mentions being in a Chinese labor camp, and it's part of the reason why I specifically requested Humberto be on the podcast with us today, because I do want to discuss communism and trends that we see in communism here in the United States. But first, when it comes to the Epoch Times, in this very, very weird phase that we find ourselves in the media space, where there is more censorship than ever, how does the organization plan to continue to combat overreach and censorship tactics by the United States government, as well as big tech that we see when it comes to the 2020 election, when it comes to certain topics that you cannot talk about? How does Epoch Times overcome those censorship tactics, and what's the plan moving forward to combat future ways to censor conservative news that may actually be on the right side of things, but the mainstream media labels it as disinformation?
Yeah. Maybe let me share with you. Epoch Times was founded in 24 years ago, and we have been experiencing censorship first from the Chinese Communist parties, and they have all the cyber attacks, and then later on I also experienced the censorship on American soil. Some of the big tech demonetize us. Without the demonetization, we would have made at least $1 million a month, from those ads. But because of demonetization, so we have to count on the subscribers' revenues. And how do we counter the censorships? I think it's about bringing the truth to people, and people will find ways to get to our information. And I'm very proud that we have a very strong team. And among our technology team, recently I have hired our chief technology officers with extensive experience from Silicon Valley and know how to deal with the big tech and how to solve the issues. But more importantly, I think we have opportunity to work with the governments to expose the censorship. I think all of us here in this venue, many of us experience censorship. I think if we band together and to expose the censorship and the lost revenues, I think there's some actions could be taken.
When it comes to the demonetizing of Epoch Times, when did that actually first start? Was it because you said they've been in existence for 24 years? When did the actual demonetization, the deplatforming tactics start against Epoch Times?
Yeah. Since 2019 it started, and then the 2020 in particular with pandemics, because we're one of the first one to really show the Wuhan lab origins. We show the side effects of COVID, and with that we were demonetized. And now it's been proven, the side effects is really serious. And also the Wuhan lab origins, and now it's being widely accepted. So Epoch Times has been in the forefront. We've been telling the truth because we have reporters on the ground inside China. You are not getting secondhand information, because our reporters went to the different hospitals, interviewed the nurses and the doctors, and even privately, because some of those cannot release the names, but we got first-hand information. And we went to the funeral homes, and we went to the cemeteries, and we look at the advertisement where they recruit people into working at funeral homes, working 24/7, and how long it took. It took more than a month to get the arms. So that is really widespread pandemic. We actually reported the pandemic in December 2019,
Wait,
several
yeah.
weeks, several months ahead. And actually, we have our subscribers, after reading the description about what's going on in China, they changed the flight tickets and returned to US without being trapped in the lockdown versus some of their friends and family members who were on the original flight tickets. Many of those died.
It's crazy to watch how the story of that virus changed. I first became aware of the COVID-19 virus. It was New Year's Eve going into 2020, December 31st of 2019. I'm sitting at home with my family. I'm on Reddit and I'm seeing these videos of people in China passing out on the street, seeing people in hazmat suits grabbing these bodies, putting them in body bags, and then throwing them inside of at one point they had refrigerated trucks that they were throwing the bodies in and then removing them. It was crazy watching it spread from China, and I started preparing my family at that point. At that point, I was working on the radio at night, and I worked from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And when I got done at 10 p.m., I would go to the 24-hour Walmart and I would grab a few supplies because I went, something is coming. This is off. And then you watched. I was working in radio, and I watched as radio shut down because the United States shut down during the lockdowns. And what I pivoted to, because I got laid off, was I pivoted to independent media. And I bring this up because I started working for a podcaster who was covering the truth about COVID-19, just like Epoch Times was. And the first thing that happened was we got deplatformed. We got demonetized. And so as a guy, it was a crew of 5 or 6 people that we were working with. We had to create our own banking platform to be able to skirt PayPal because we could no longer accept funds through PayPal. We could no longer broadcast on Facebook. We had to create our own website, create our own platform to stream onto the website through. You had to go through all of these hoops to finally get the truth out. And then look, 4 years later, it's proven that the truth that was censored was actually the right side of things. You come from communist China. When in the history have people censoring free speech ever been on the right side of things? Has it ever happened?
Well, thank you for bringing this up. So, I grew up in the communist China. There was no freedom of expressions, no freedom of speech. In fact, the editor of the People's Chinese Daily, which is the mouthpiece for the CCP, said that the only thing you can trust is the date on the header. You learn to read it in reverse. For example, the Tiananmen Square massacre on June 4th, 1989, it describes students attack the military people. Students have no weapons. How do they attack? And they talk about no people die. Well, experienced people know that as media, you report nobody died under the CCP, that means tons of people die. In fact, my best friend, who was a medical school student and he worked on the ambulance, he personally carried dozens of dead bodies and injured students.
So what parallels do you see between the two situations? What happened in China back then? What's happening in America today?
It's really the reliving of the cultural revolutions. When I saw here in America, the chaos that created, on campus and also on shops. I look at the downtown Minnesota, that happened then, and also the historic landmarks and the statues being crushed and being removed, and that's like a cancel culture. During the 10 years of cultural revolutions from 1966 to 1976, they systematically destroy historical figures, destroy the culture. In fact, Chinese Communist Party took another extent. Chinese characters has been in existence for 5,000 years, and they change the characters. For example, the character love is written as a roof. Under the roof, there are people intertwining, and then in between the roof and the people is the heart, the shape of the hearts. So that's love. The simplified Chinese character by the Communist Party is roof and people, but no hearts. So what's love without hearts? So it's systematic cancellation. Many people do not understand what's cultural revolution is like. When my mom's water broke, she rode on the back of the bicycle to the hospital. I was in a breech position, so C-section was necessary. But all the experienced OBGYN were sent to labor camps doing farming work. So no experienced OBGYNs when a C-section was necessary.
Wow.
And later on, my mom, whenever she saw a doctor, her first question will be, Doctor, when did you get your medical training? If the training occurred during 1966 to 1976, my mom would immediately say goodbye because she knew there were no professors, medical professors, to teach the students. So they got the MDs but learn nothing. So you wouldn't trust, doctors who learn nothing. So the systematic destruction. I was born during the Cultural Revolutions. I grew up in a very remote southern China. My parents were college graduate engineers, and they did not want them to use the engineering skill sets. It was doing farming and sewing, and where we lived, it was so primitive. There was no private bathroom. There was no refrigerators, no washer dryers, and for me to go to school, I walked 1.5 hours by foot each way and past cemetery, climb the hill, walk past crop fields on the other side of the hill is the school. And I have to grow sugarcane, carry fertilizers heavier than myself to the top of the hill. And during harvest season, they use hand tools so the crops drop on the field. So every day I was required to fill up one full bag of grains that I pick up from the fields, work hours in order to return to school. So that's really communism. And one more thing to add, no, they systematically destroy classical culture. So you cannot listen to Beethoven, Mozart. It's
That's
not
a
only
shame.
Chinese culture, but it's like classical culture. They don't want you to know because 5,000 years civilization, there was no communism. And so they want to eliminate that.
Wow.
What to hear
I-
your story and to hear your journey from where you came from to where you are today. What year did you immigrate to the United States of America?
It was 1990, and the trigger point was the Tiananmen Square massacre. I was lucky. I was not at the square, and so that triggered the decisions for me to come to the United States.
So you lived in a remote location, an hour and a half that you'd have to walk to and from school each day, 3 hours of walking to get to school, to now being the CEO of one of the biggest independent media companies in the United States as the CEO of Epoch Times. Does that, I can't think of anything that screams more about the opportunities that this country can offer. When they say that the American dream is dead, I can look at you and see that it is not. It is alive and well, because look at where you came from and look at where you are today. So it's an amazing journey to watch someone go through that, and I applaud you as well as this country. Where else in the world would somebody who overcame the obstacles that you overcame be able to rise to the position that you are
and
in
not
today?
only that, she's a woman that's in a leadership position, which isn't that common nowadays. And I think it's so admirable that she's a CEO of a company. And we work for Valuetainment, which wants to educate and inspire future leaders of the world. What would be your biggest takeaway or lesson from as a CEO of a major company?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. So it's true, I have realized the American dream. When I came, I was a teenager. I did not know anybody. There were no relatives. I came by myself to this country. And I will share with you, I at the time was broken English. My accounting professor talked about makeup exam. I thought, makeup on the face. So that's my level of English. But I am very fortunate. And so the mentor at church suggested I should study accounting. I said, I'm not interested in accounting. She said, you landed at the #1 accounting school in this country. You should study. You go for the best, and then get your CPA license as soon as possible, which I did. So I worked 2 to 3 part-time jobs through
Wow.
those school years, and finished my bachelor and my master in a total of 4 years without any AP courses.
Wow.
And then I passed my CPA exam before I graduated. Then I started as a financial analyst, and then finished my experience to get my certified public accountant license, and then pivot to other areas. One thing that I learned was in the early days, I wasn't as confident about myself. So my boss presented and promotion opportunities to director level, I declined 2 times. And then the third time, I thought, well, I don't want to be 3 strikeouts in terms of the baseball strategy, so I accepted. I think I would really encourage all females have confidence in yourself. Even if you're not expert, you can learn and you can find people who can help you. I would say work hard and also volunteer for yourself and volunteer to do more projects. So I was working with my colleagues who have like closer to retirements, and my boss kept giving me more assignments than my colleague with 30 more years experience than me, because I took the initiative. I traveled the extra mile. I make sure everything I did was accurate, and kind of like I played double advocates to think through, make sure I like no stones unturned. And I think the extra efforts really stood out. In fact, I was given an international assignment before I reached 30. And how I was given that opportunity was in a company settings, and I asked a lot of questions. So my future manager spotted me and asked my boss, and said, I want Janice, because she asked great questions and she was very responsive to other people's feedback. And so that's how I got the expat assignments. I was managing 13 countries.
Wow.
And so I would say the United States is truly a land of opportunities, regardless of your backgrounds. If you work hard, and most important is, I believe, key elements, impeccable integrity. And that was the feedback that my former CEO wrote about. And then also volunteer. I did tons of volunteer work. I've been served on the Circles Board of Kennedy Centers, the individual fundraising arm for more than 4 presidential administrations. I volunteer for, board of trustee for think tank and for medical school and so on and so forth. And so when you put your heart and soul to help others, and you gain your board of director experience. And I think that may be one of the reasons that I was chosen, even though I work on the corporate setting. And Epoch Time is a non-profit organization. And so even though I have corporate experience, but because of my non-profit board of director experience, give me a unique advantage to really drive, the donations, and also really about how to reach out to more people and also bring the best practices. I've been fortunate. The Fortune 500 companies that I serve, they are all among the top 3 in each of the industries. And I was often handpicked by the CEO, approached by the CEO to follow the CEO, or they make recommendations for me for the next chapters. And so I would say I also take pride in developed talents. I feel it's always more blessed to give than to be given. And for me, with broken ankles, came to this country as a teenager, and without any guidance. My parents do not speak English. In fact, I gave myself the name Janice because they didn't know English. And so I look up the back of the dictionary, and I told my teacher my name is Janice, and she looked at me like, Janice. I said, yeah, J-A and then nice.
Oh my God.
Well, so it shows it's not just enough because you read a lot. And Humberto, I want to go to you with a question, and Amy, if you have anything as well, because our time is limited and we have to wrap up soon. But it doesn't just show that being in America is enough, right? This is the land of opportunity. You'll read a lot from CNBC, Bloomberg. The American dream is dead. The youth cannot afford homes. You read these stories that come from the left, from the liberal side of media, where the American dream is dead, but it's not. The opportunities in this country exist, but it takes a few things in order for you to achieve them: courage, competence, hard work. You exemplify all of those things. But it's not just enough to be born in this country to have those things. You need to have the courage, the competence, the confidence to go after and seek those opportunities and take advantage of them. And you have. Humberto, your question for Janice. Janice, by the way, if you're just joining us out, and I can't hear Humberto, could you check Humberto's mic? But joining us, if you're just joining us, we have Janice Trey. She is the CEO of Epoch Times. And Humberto, what is your question for Janice?
First of all, it's a pleasure to have you in the panel. I'm a huge fan of Chinese culture, like pre-CCP, you can draw a lot of parallels between what's going on in America or what's been going on the last 20 years. We have Marxists and Maoists in government, all right? You can talk about Gramsci and a lot of the Marxists that set the footprints to turn societies Marxist or Maoist. There's a lot of literature. For every guy that wrote how to make someone a Marxist, there's 100 guys, there's one guy trying to turn it around. What would be your thinking of how to de-Marxify the government or de-Marxify society? Is media enough? Or we need to go deeper and start getting into education?
Yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend a book called The Spectre of the Communism Ruling the World, published by Epoch Times in 2018. It shows the systematic infiltration of communism in the Western world, into the education system, into the judicial system, into culture, the cancel culture, and they use just different names. So we need to be alert of, not only the Confucius Institute that they send their teachers and send their textbooks, and they're trying to spread propaganda, communist propaganda. So we need to be aware of. And right now there has been a systematic transnational suppressions. Really, Chinese Communist Party at the specific direction of Xi Jinping 2 years ago to use legacy media like the New York Times, the social media, and also other, and also the judicial system to attack American companies like the Epoch Times. You mentioned about your interest in traditional Chinese culture. I would encourage everyone to look at, to watch Shen Yun Performing Arts. It's a classical Chinese dance. Kate Blanchett described it as an extraordinary experience, exquisitely beautiful and great for children. So, because it presents China before communism. So, all of us have to band together to eliminate communism from the face of earth, because communism is about using struggles and violence. We want peace. We want sustainabilities, and so it's not just happening in China. In fact, the Epoch Times published like 20 years ago the 9 commentaries of the Communist Party, and it has inspired 440 million people withdraw from the Chinese Communist Party membership and its affiliates. It's really migrating from a communism state towards a new communist state. We need help. So all of us speaking up like what we are doing here is exposing communism will truly engage the Chinese citizens, because they need the voice from us and the support. And for all of us, we have a very clear actions. Tell your member of Congress that you support the Falun Gong Protection Act. Falun Gong is a meditation, Tai Chi type of exercise, 5 gentle exercise that bring tremendous health benefits.
You look great.
So, but it's being persecuted, 25 years persecution, just because they believe in truth, compassion, tolerance. And Kelly, you mentioned about forced organ harvesting earlier. People are being, Falun Gong practitioners are being killed on demand because they don't drink, they don't smoke, and they do exercise every day. So they are the healthiest people in China. And you don't want a smoker's lung, you don't want a alcoholic person's liver or kidney, and so they are being targeted. So think of people being killed on demand, and that's why the Falun Gong Protection Act is something that you should tell your member of Congress to support it, so that people won't be killed on demand. I mean, that's the bottom line of humanities. If we don't stand up and don't speak up, because people in China, they cannot speak up, right? So that is really important. And don't think that it's only happening in China. It actually, they have, if we let it continue, the attack today is on Shen Yun and on Epoch Times. Tomorrow will be on other American citizens, American companies. And so all we need to do is speak up. And at Epoch Times, we focus on truth, tradition, and hope. Bringing hope is something really important. So despite the atrocity I personally experienced, I'm always hopeful, and I want to instill hope for others. And tradition is another aspect. The cancel culture is trying to remove the classical and traditional culture. We believe that we are created by the creators, and so the traditional classical culture help us connect with divinities, and so we have to think in the macro scales, not only individual. I'm a mom, and for our children's, grandchildren's, and for everybody, and an injustice anywhere is a threat of justice everywhere. So it just takes what evil most afraid is silence. So don't be a bystander. Speak up, and subscribe to Epoch Times. We provide you timely informations, like with the emergency preparations. People during hurricane find it very useful, and we actually have a lot of insights about what's going on in China that impact the world.
Tremendous work.
And so, the only way to stay tuned is keep coming to our websites and download our apps. Our app is one of the top 10 paid subscription apps, and we have a publication in 23 languages, 36 countries and regions, and so we need the whole world to align with the American values, the American freedoms. Our message have to be widespread to every corner of the world, such that prosperity and peace will be possible on American soil.
Well, if you want to support truth, tradition, and hope, go to epochtimes.com, EPOCH times.com. Support them. Janice, this is the CEO of Epoch Times, Janice Trey. Janice, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to everybody at home for watching. Thank you to my unusual suspects. If you're new to the channel and you've not done so already, make sure you like and subscribe. There will be a link below for you to find more episodes of the podcast, and we will see you again on another episode of The Unusual Suspects.
So if you like this clip, click right here. And if you want to see more like it, click right here. Stay angry, Patriots.